what I'm really curious about, because obviously you grew up in Ballarat, obviously you're a dancer, and obviously you're a member of the LGBT plus community. How much of yourself is this book an homage to?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of me in the story and in the characters, but possibly not in the most obvious ways always.
Mm-hmm.
I think as writers, we often, put ourselves into the stories in whether it's just like a tiny character trait that we have that we give one of the supporting characters and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of that in there. There's a lot of my personality, I think, in all of the characters, which maybe is like super egotistical, or maybe it just makes it authentic. I don't know. But yeah, obviously I grew up in Ballarat, so I know that place very well, and I wanted the story to be kind of rooted in that realism for me as a teenager. And the town has changed a fair bit since I lived there. It's come a long way, as the whole country has, in terms of attitudes, to the queer community and that sort of stuff. But it is still a country town, so it has those elements of small-mindedness and stuff like that, where it's often just people aren't exposed to everything, so they don't understand it, and it's a bit scary and whatever. So a lot of that kind of stuff, like the elements of homophobia and stuff in the book, are definitely they definitely draw on my own personal experiences from growing up in a country town. But yeah, it's largely fictional for me. There was this funny thing that happened where I wrote this whole book about this boy dealing with his kind of loss of identity when he had to stop dancing because of an injury and all of this sort of stuff, and his kind of process of grieving that, and all of those things that come with losing that part of himself. And when I was writing it, I had no idea that it was in relation to myself. But afterwards, at some point in the very late stages of editing, or even possibly when I was pitching to publishers, I kind of had this moment of being like, oh, I actually wrote this in a way to help me process that same experience in my own life, which is very different for me. And it was more just about me transitioning from my career as a dancer into my career in publishing and writing, but with this big gap in the middle of a couple of years where I sort of just had no concept of where I was going or what I was doing, and I really didn't feel like myself. And that was when I started writing the book. And it just strangely never occurred to me that I was kind of processing those feelings through Luca, even though our situations were very different. So in a very long-winded answer, I guess you could say that quite a lot of the book is, based on my experiences, but in a very kind of fragmented and different way.
I think it's just drawing on my own sort of experience as a writer. I think every book that you write is actually far more personal than you think it is. And that's what I love about it. Like, what I love is that you take something that's personal, and that's potentially something you're struggling with, or you're trying to conceptualize or reconcile or work through, and you put it into the world in a way that helps people who are potentially going through the same thing. I think that's actually the magic of story and books, and it's just that's really special that hopefully it helped you. But also, I think there are a lot of people who go through a similar experience where they lose something that is central to their identity, and they have to deal with it. So that's really special and lovely.
Yeah, and I think it's a really weird thing, and probably a fine line. I think if you set out with the intention of writing a book to help yourself or help others, it comes across in a very kind of weighty and possibly heavy-handed way. So I think, it's that kind of magic when your subconscious is doing the work, and you're just like, I'm writing this cute book about this dancer. But in the back of your head, your subconscious is like, haha, I'm helping you with this. Which I think makes it really interesting. And I guess it does add that kind of layer of authenticity without it seeming like you're necessarily, pushing that agenda too strongly, because then it feels like it's, I guess, didactic and kind of, it's a very different vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.